Hey friends, welcome back. Now we are going to continue our Nextjs project series. In this video, we are going to authenticate an user. In the last video, we have created sign up API and we have created some accounts. It's time to authenticate those users, right? How we are going to do that? So for the authentication, what we need user email address and password. We are going to send email and password with the request, and we are going to find out if that email exists or not, and if that password is correct or not. If that password is correct, then we are going to send back a response and say you're an authenticated user, right? But what about subsequent requests? Once a user logged in, means she gonna send other requests, means click events, page load, and lots of things may happen, right? So those needs to be on authenticated request, right? Once a user validated, means it's validated till the session ends. So how we are going to do that? So for that, what we are going to do, we can create a JSON web token, right? We can store the token in the cookies, and whenever a subsequent request goes after login, then we can find that token in the cookie. And if token exists in the cookie, it means that's an authenticated user. If token doesn't exist, it means that's not an authenticated user. So we can say user, oh please authenticate yourself, or please log in normal language. So this is how it works, right? So for that, what we need couple of libraries like JSON web token library to install to use the JSON web token, and we may need some cookies library to access the cookies, right? Also, we need to protect the cookie because we want no client can access that cookie. So we'll make that cookie to HTTP only request, right? So to avoid all of these problem, we have something from the Next, and that is NextAuth. So here I can show you, and that is going to do the same stuff for us. Instead, we will not do things. So here is this library, NextAuth, NextAuth.js, and we're going to use this library, and we will do the same stuff. And this library will create a token for us, and we can easily, it provides lots of abstract functions that we can use and find out user authenticated or not. So let's install this library. So this works fine with a v3, but here you see v4, and there are a couple of things you're not going to see that. So I'm going to use the v3 version instead of v4 version. So let's go and check out. So here we're going to install our library, npm install hyphen save next hyphen auth. Let's install. Oh no, stop. So here we'll say at the rate 3. So we want to install the third version because some of the documentation works with version 3 only, and that's I verified by myself. So here we are installing npm install save next auth at the rate 3. So it will install the third version. Okay, cool. So here our next auth installed. So here our next auth installed. Now let me tell you about this library a little bit. So this is a library with lots of functionalities, right? And we are not going to use all of them except one. So here this library provides so many things, like you can do the authentication with Apple, with Atlassian, and there are a couple of other things like for Do School, Box, Bungie, and I even don't know what are those things, right? So I know a couple of things like Facebook and Google, GitLab, GitHub. So you can use all of them as a provider, right? As a OAuth provider or third-party integration for your authentication, right? So here I'm gonna use something raw, that is the credential. So let's go and check out this one, credentials. Let's click on this, and here we have this credential, and here is the overview of this credential. You can read about this. So if it comes with a constraint that users authenticated in this manner are not persisted in the database, and consequently that credential provider can only be used if JSON web tokens are enabled for sessions. Okay, so blah blah blah, and let's go over here, and this is our provider, how it works, right? So we have to simply create a file within our API directory auth, and then we have to use a slug nextauth.js, right? So let's go and create that file. So here is our API, and here we're going to create a folder that's auth. Oh, not that one. Let's rename it again, auth, and then we are going to use this name, copy, and we will create this a file within this auth folder, and here it is, dot 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 nextauth.js. So this is the instruction from nextauth. We can't change this thing, okay, because it is going to handle so many other things, right? And this is what we need right now. So let's copy this, copy, and paste over here, and here. So basically we are okay, cool. Okay, let's remove this thing because that's some piece of code is missing. We'll say export and default here next auth, and we have imported this next auth, and there we're going to use our object, and then here we're going to say providers, and this is an array. Okay, so where we will copy this now. Okay, so we can provide multiple providers. So here we are using the credential. You can use Facebook, GitHub, GitLab, Google, whatever you want. Okay, so for the credentials, the name credential, right? And here user credentials, that is unnecessary, so you can simply comment this out. And this function is important because when you are going to make a request for authentication with your email and password, then this function is going to execute authorize function. Okay, and this is the user. This is a dummy user, so let's comment it out. And here we are going to find our own user. So basically within the credential we'll find email and password. So here I'm going to say const credentials, sorry, here I'm going to say email and then password. Okay, well, let's take this thing credentials, and here we're going to say email and password. Okay, so email and password will send from the client side and we'll log this value. So we'll simply say console.log, and we're going to say log, we're going to say email and password. So when we'll get that email and password, we'll log over here. So for the like, are we getting the data or not? Next thing, what are we going to do after the credential? We'll use our user model. So here we have our user model, right? Simply say code user from, let's come out and models, and then user, right? So this is our user model to find out the user from the database. So you're gonna say user dot find, and here we're gonna say find one. Okay, so these are the methods from Mongoose. Find one, and here pass the email, right? And then we'll say uh, execute, right? So here we'll execute this one. Say const user equals to await. This is an asynchronous method, so we can use await to get the promise resolved. And here we got the user. We'll simply log this console log, and then we can say user, right? So after getting the user, we'll log the user, and here is the user. If we send this user, means that's an authenticated user. Otherwise, if we send null, or if we throw error, it means that's the request is like not valid. Okay, so not an authenticated user. So let's save this now and let's try to authenticate and send some requests. Let's see what happens. So here we're gonna say login index.js, and here is our sign in component, and let's format with our code prettier. And here we don't need this image. Save this. Also we are gonna get this style from the sign up, sorry, this one. Let's copy this, copy and paste in our login component. Okay, now on submit, we're gonna handle this login handler, and we'll create some state variable. So here is our value and on-chain value and email and password value. Save. On submit, we'll use this login handler. On login handler event, say event dot event point, and I will create the payload const payload email comma password. So how we are going to do the signing with email and password? So here we have got the email. So Nextauth provides this library package.json, and this is a library. This provides a sign-in method. Okay, so we can simply go to the login folder here, and we can say import sign in. And also, let me show you. So here you can search anything, whatever you want. Sign in. So this is the API, and here how you can import this. So let's copy this and let's paste over here. This is a sign in method to provide this next auth, and here we're gonna say sign in, and it takes. So here's the example. If you're using sign method, if Google, then say Google, and if it's email based, then say email. If credential, then simply say credential, right? So we'll go and use a credential, and that's all. So here we're gonna say sign in, and then here we're gonna say string. That's a credentials, and then it takes provider is credentials, and the provider here we're gonna pass basically payload. So email and password is password. Say payload email and password, and save this, and we'll go and check this thing. So reload, let's inspect. Console, and go to the network tab, and I'm gonna say, okay, what user? Let's create an account. Hash password sign up. Sign up worked, right? Now let's go and try to sign in. Hash cannot read properties of undefined. So here we e.target.values. There is some error in our component of value. Okay, so there is a problem. It's not Tiger, it's target. Please target. Now let's try to sign in. We'll say hash webscript.info password, sign in, and request, and then refresh. Lots of things happen, right? Let's go and simply check the terminal first. So here you can see we are getting this email and then password, and then we have this user, right? So this is what we have logged within the asynchronous function, synchronize, authorize, right? So here we have got this email, and we find out the right user, and then we have logged that user. So that's a correct one. Now we have to say password is correct or not, right? So for that, we're going to use bcrypt, bcrypt from bcrypt, and here we're going to say const user equals to user underscore doc, and you're going to say bcrypt dot compare, and then it takes the password, right? So data string password, and then hash password. That's user dot password. So hash password. And we're gonna return a promise. Say is matched. So if that's a true, if user and is matched, if is matched is true, then we are gonna return this user doc. Let's say user doc. Otherwise, we're gonna send null. Right? Save, refresh, save it, and then refresh it. So let's use this hash and then password sign in. So it's, you can see the page is reloading after the authentication, right? If you check the logs, then you can see is matched, right? Email is here, and the is matched, that's a promise. Okay, so we should resolve this thing. Is matched is a promise. So we should use a wait over here. Okay, now let's try this thing again. And you're gonna say hash 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sign in. And then you can see the page is reloading, right? That we can fix. But let's see the terminal this time. Is match is true. So the password is matched. Now the user is authenticated, right? It's time to have a JWT token. But what we can do, we don't want to reload or navigate anywhere else once a user authenticate, because we want to do it from the client side, right? So let's go to the VS Code, and here we are sending this sign in request, right? So here with payload, we will send a redirect method property, and we'll say false, redirect false, right? So hopefully that's the correct one. Next shot, and here you can see sign in. This is the callback URL. If you want the user to be like navigated to some particular URL after authentication, you can do this. And here are some other properties like redirect. So here you can see redirect is, you can use redirect false, and then it will not navigate. It will stay in the same page. So let's try it now. And here say hash and then password, sign in. And now it's, you can see it's not navigating anywhere else, right? It's not going anywhere else. And here you can see some requests like credential, and that's a URL request, then CSRF, the CSRF token, and also the JWT token. You can verify the JWT token within the application. And here we are. And here are some of the authentication of, like, you can see NextAuth session token, callback URL, and you can click on this, and this is our JWT token. And you can see this HTTP only is 2 here, so no client-side JavaScript can access this NextAuth token, right? Only it is accessible via the request method. Okay, so from client side, this can't be accessible. Okay, so let me delete this, clear all, and let me show you again. Sign in, and you see the token got created. The user session started now. So here is our JWT token, right? Also, let's go to the console, and here is invalid property down. We can fix this warning, right? So let's go, and where is our for? Say HTML for. Okay, HTML for replace. Now this warning will be away. So this is resolved, and let's refresh that thing. Okay, cool. So we can sign in the user, and it returns a promise const, and we are going to make this function sync, and here we're going to say a result await, right? And you can simply go and log this value console.log and say result. Okay, and here we'll try again, hash and then password. Clear this log, sign in, and you can see we got this result. And here's the result. Error is null, okay is true. It means user is authenticated. This is the information by default you are going to get from this sign in method. If you want additional information, then you have to do a little additional work, right? So okay is true, you are sure this user is authenticated, error is null, right? So we have to work on it. Here we're gonna say, let's go next shot, and it provides some callbacks, and we're gonna use that callbacks. So here we are, and let's go to the providers, configuration, providers, and callbacks. So these are the callbacks you can use, and we're gonna override our token with some additional data, right? So here this credential provide, close this, and give it a comma and say callbacks. So here is our callbacks, and there's something wrong. Copy and paste. Okay, where is the problem? Okay, we need to have one more. Let's just save it. So okay, so here's a callback. We are not going to override sign-in method, so let's remove this. Not going to override redirect method. We don't want to go anywhere else. So these two left, session and JWT. So how it works, first we create the token, JWT token, and then it returns the session, right? So here we are going to simply log few things to identify our response because it's a library, right? We don't know everything. So here we're gonna say here we'll say what is it? It's a print from JWT, and we're gonna say token comma user, right? And here we're gonna say console.log, and here we're gonna say session, and here we're gonna say session comma user, right? So we'll see these two information and manipulate based on this, right? So let's save this and let's try it out. So here we go, and let's clear this thing and click on sign in, and you got the result as it is. Now let's go in terminal and see what it has printed. So we have this JWT, and within this JWT we have this token and this user, and this is the user information we have got, right? So this user information, if you look at this, we have name, email, password as it is, right? So if you open this credential and this user doc, so basically whatever we are going to return from here, that is going to come over here, right? So this one is executing first, and that's the reason we can see this email and password, right? So basically we'll delete the password from there, and we'll say delete user doc dot password, user doc password, and then we'll return the user doc. Next, we'll get the ID. We want the ID, right? So yep, we want the ID. So here we're gonna say if, and that ID is within the user, right? So this is what it is going to return. So this is the token, right? So your token will be formed with this value: name, email, picture, and sub. So we can modify this value and we can recreate the token, right? So we go and attach any value. If user and user dot, what do we have? Underscore ID, user dot underscore ID that exists. Then we'll simply say, let's bind, we'll bind something with the token. We'll say token dot ID equals to user dot underscore ID, right? And then we'll see our session value, right? So let's save this and let's try it again. Sign in. Okay, so it's not printing the session because we need to call this session, right? So how we are going to call the session? For the demo, let's go to the login, and here we're gonna say this library also provides a get session method. We'll say get session, and here we're gonna simply say await const session wait, and now we're gonna console log, and we're gonna say session. Save this, and now let's try this thing out. Let's say sign in. Okay, so we have printed this session, and these are the default value, as I told you, like name, image, and email you'll get by default. Now we want to manipulate this value. So we go and check the terminal. This time we have printed session also because we have called get session, right? And here you see the token, we have attached this ID within the token, right? So we're getting this ID within the token, and this session method is printing this values like user session, and then this one, right? We are getting this ID. So we'll use this user ID and we'll bind within the session object, right? So session dot user dot will attach an ID. So here we go, and kind of like a little bit confusing, but once you do it like a couple of times, then you'll be familiar with it. So here we can simply say if user and user dot ID, that ID exists, and we'll say session dot user dot ID equals to user dot ID, right? So this way we can bind ID with the session. Okay. Likewise, you can bind other variables also, like email. If you have image, then you can bind the image also within the session, image path or URL, whatever it is. Save this. Now let's save. Now this time you see we don't have any ID over here, but if we sign again and you see the session, and here is the session, and here's a user, and here this time we have this ID. So this is how we have manipulated this one. Now we have this ID, and now we can also use this get session method in our API request and find out the ID of the user. If there is an ID, it means that's an authenticated user. So yeah, cool. And now it's time to do a little bit of work over here. So instead of doing return null, we'll simply throw an error if there is a problem. So here we'll comment this thing and uncomment this one through, and here we're going to say, what is that? Invalid user or something like that, whatever you want. Invalid user. Okay, let's save this. Now enter the wrong password and do the sign in. You see, we have printed this result. If you open this result, then you're going to see error invalid user. So if you are authenticated successfully, then you'll get error null. Otherwise, you're going to get like whatever message you're going to pass from there, you are going to get that message over here. Email or password incorrect. Okay, now save this and let's pretty this code. So we'll say from a document with prettier. Now this looks fine. Save this and let's go to the login page. And here we are. So here the result will simply check if result dot error. If there is an error, so if error is null, it means a false. We'll make this true and import use router from next/router, and here we're gonna say use router const, and you're gonna say what are the const? So here we have our router, and then we'll simply say if error is null, that's a false. We'll make this thing true, and we'll say router because that's authenticated user. Router dot replace the replace method to change the URL, and here we're gonna say homepage because that's a login user, right? And let's save this. Else, if there is a some message, then we'll simply remove this thing and we'll say set error message, and here we're gonna say whatever the error message we are going to get. We'll simply say result dot error, and we'll print that error. Simply copy from the sign up. Sorry, from here. Copy this now. So if error message, then we'll show the error message. Okay, save. Now let's try. And here we're gonna say sign in. Cannot read property underscore doc of null. Okay, that's cool. And cannot read property doc of null. So here we go, and where is authorize function? So underscore doc here. So we're gonna simply say if user valid, then we'll continue the process. Otherwise, we're gonna say throw new error, and here we're gonna say something went wrong. Right, save, and let's try it again. And here you see something went wrong. You can also say you can also check like email and password is exist or not. If email and password is empty, then you can say throw new error. I can simply have like if, or rather than simply say we have created a validate all ones function, right? And here we can simply say email and then password, right? There is a problem, and we'll throw an error, right? So if you go and check our util command method, that's throw error, right? Just a throw error, throw new error. That's good. Let's try if this works fine. Otherwise, we have to do it in a like manual way. Okay, so let's try this thing. Incorrect failed to construct URL, invalid URL. Okay, that's not working because that's throwing error, and we are not handling the try catch. We're not doing the try catch. So we can wrap this within the try and catch. So here we go and try next, and here we say throw, and whatever the error will get will simply say throw new error and then error. Okay, cool. So let's try this now and refresh. Okay, now let's put sign in and email required, working fine, right? Let's add an email as password required. Now let's put a password, sign in. So basically this is success. We have authenticated and now we are in the home page, working fine. You see the result. There is error. There is no error. So error is null. Okay, it's true. Status 200.